The emergency alarm echoed through the corridors of St. Margaret's Hospital at 3 in the morning. But it wasn't a medical emergency that had the entire administrative team rushing to the basement. It was something far worse. The hospital's entire data system, containing millions of patient records, billing information, and critical medical histories worth over $100 million, had been corrupted by a ransomware attack. Every screen displayed the same chilling message demanding cryptocurrency within 48 hours, or everything would be permanently destroyed. In the chaos of panicking executives and helpless specialists, nobody noticed the quiet janitor in the corner, methodically mopping the floor with the same careful attention he gave everything in his life. His name was Marcus Chen, and in less than 12 hours, he would become the most unlikely hero this hospital had ever seen. If you believe in the power of quiet heroes, second chances, and the idea that anyone can make a difference no matter their job title, please hit that like button. Drop a comment about someone who inspired you, share this story, and subscribe to our channel. You won't regret it. Marcus had been working the night shift at St. Margaret's for 6 years, ever since his wife passed away from cancer, leaving him alone to raise their 7-year-old daughter, Emma. The hospital held painful memories for him, every hallway a reminder of the countless nights he'd spent holding his wife's hand. But he couldn't leave. The health insurance was good. The hours allowed him to be there when Emma woke up for school. And most importantly, it was honest work. He took pride in keeping the floors spotless, in making sure every corner sparkled, in being invisible but essential. Other janitors complained about the work, but Marcus saw it differently. He believed that a clean hospital could mean the difference between infection and healing, between despair and hope. That night, as executives crowded into the basement server room, Marcus continued his routine. He'd learned long ago that people talked freely around janitors, as if the uniform made him part of the furniture. He heard everything. The CTO explaining that the hackers had exploited a vulnerability. The CFO calculating the catastrophic financial loss if they paid the ransom versus if they lost everything. The CEO, a stern woman named Dr. Patricia Morrison, trying to maintain composure while her voice cracked with stress. They had called in every expert, every consultant, every cybersecurity firm within 100 miles, but the consensus was grim. The encryption was military grade. The backup systems had been compromised. They had no choice but to pay or watch decades of critical data vanish forever. Marcus finished mopping and quietly rolled his cart toward the elevator, but something one of the IT specialists said made him pause. The young man was explaining that the ransomware had a specific signature, something he'd seen in a case study from years ago but couldn't quite remember. Marcus's heart began to race. He knew that case study. Before Emma was born, before his wife got sick, before life had reduced his dreams to dust, Marcus had been a cybersecurity analyst at a major tech firm. He'd published papers, spoken at conferences, been on track for a brilliant career. But when his wife's illness drained their savings and consumed every moment of his time, he'd stepped away. After she died, he'd tried to return, but the industry had moved on. His skills were considered outdated, and job after job rejected him for having a gap in his resume. Eventually, he'd taken the janitor position just to survive, to keep a roof over Emma's head and food on their table. He stood there, card in hand, watching these exhausted professionals struggle with a problem he was almost certain he could solve. But who would listen to a janitor? He'd learned to make himself invisible, to accept his place, to not reach for things that weren't meant for people like him anymore. He thought about Emma, about the picture she'd drawn that morning of him in his janitor uniform with a cape, titled "My Superhero Dad." She believed he could do anything. Maybe it was time he believed it too. Marcus took a deep breath and walked back into the server room. The conversation stopped. Dr. Morrison looked at him with confusion and slight irritation. He could feel his hands trembling as he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper at first. He explained who he used to be, what he used to do, and most importantly, what he thought might save them. The room erupted in skeptical murmurs. The CTO actually laughed, suggesting that Marcus go back to his mop. But Dr. Morrison held up her hand. She looked at Marcus with an intensity that made him feel seen for the first time in years, and she asked him one simple question. If he was wrong, they would lose hours they didn't have. If he was right, could he actually fix this? Marcus thought about every sacrifice he'd made, every dream he'd buried, every night he'd tucked Emma into bed, wondering if he was enough. He nodded. What happened over the next 8 hours became legend at St. Margaret's Hospital. Marcus sat at the terminal with a focus that transcended exhaustion, his fingers moving across the keyboard with a speed and precision that left the IT team speechless. He'd recognized the ransomware variant from a case study he'd written 7 years earlier about a particular hacker group's methodology. He knew their patterns, their arrogance, and most critically, their mistakes. While everyone else had been trying to decrypt the files, Marcus focused on something different. He found the hidden back door the hackers had left for themselves, a digital breadcrumb trail they never expected anyone to discover. It was meticulous, dangerous work. One wrong move could trigger the deletion protocol. The room fell silent except for the clicking of keys and the collective breathing of people watching a miracle unfold. As dawn broke through the basement windows, Marcus typed the final command sequence. Screens throughout the hospital flickered. The ransom message disappeared. And one by one, system after system came back online. Patient records intact, billing data recovered, everything saved. The room exploded in cheers. The IT specialists were hugging each other. The executives were crying with relief. And Marcus just sat there, trembling and exhausted, hardly believing what he'd just done. Dr. Morrison walked over to him, and in front of everyone, she did something that would change his life forever. She asked him if he would accept the position of Chief Information Security Officer with a salary that made his janitor's wage look like pocket change, full benefits, and the chance to build the hospital's cybersecurity infrastructure from the ground up. Marcus couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face as he thought about Emma, about the college fund he could now build for her, about the dignity of being recognized for his mind again, about his late wife who had always believed he was destined for more. But Dr. Morrison wasn't finished. In front of the entire hospital board, she made another announcement. The hospital would create a new program, the Marcus Chen Second Chance Initiative, offering education and career development opportunities to any staff member, regardless of their current position, who wanted to grow. Because if a janitor could save the hospital when the experts couldn't, imagine what other hidden talents were walking these halls, waiting to be discovered. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that it's never too late to use your gifts, if it made you believe in the power of resilience and second chances, please don't scroll past. Hit that like button. Leave a comment telling us about a time you or someone you know rose above their circumstances, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. The following Monday, when Marcus came to work in a suit instead of a uniform, carrying a briefcase instead of a mop, Emma was with him. Dr. Morrison had arranged for a special ceremony, and as Marcus stood before the entire hospital staff receiving an award for his heroism, he held his daughter's hand tight. He spoke about how he'd spent years feeling invisible, feeling like his best days were behind him, how easy it would have been to stay quiet that night and let someone else handle the crisis. But he'd learned something crucial. Our value isn't determined by our job titles or our paychecks. It's determined by what we choose to do when the moment calls us to be brave. Before we end, please comment below. Heroes come in all forms if you believe that everyone has something valuable to contribute to this world. That $100 million crisis didn't just save a hospital's data. It saved a man's belief in himself. It proved that expertise doesn't have an expiration date, that circumstances might bend us, but they don't have to break us, and that sometimes the person who can solve the impossible problem is the one everyone has trained themselves not to see. Marcus Chen had spent 6 years making himself invisible, but in 8 hours, he made himself unforgettable. And every night when he tucks Emma into bed now, in their new home with her college fund growing, he tells her the truth she'd always known. He really is a superhero. Not because he wears a cape, but because he never stopped being who he was, even when the world forgot to look.